A teacher stealing food from a 3-year-old child? It sounded absurd, completely insane. But what Andrew Walker uncovered about his daughter's preschool was far worse than he ever could have imagined. It started as nothing more than a fleeting thought. Something small, barely worth noticing. The first time his 3-year-old daughter, Lily, came home with an empty lunchbox, he didn't think much of it. She was growing fast, after all, and little kids tended to get hungry quickly. He shrugged it off. Maybe she was just eating more lately, and that was that. Andrew had packed her lunch that morning, the same way he always did. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich cut into quarters, apple slices with a touch of lemon to keep them from browning, some crackers, and a juice box. It wasn't a feast, but it had always been enough. But then it happened again, and again. Every afternoon, Lily would come through the door, kick off her tiny sneakers, and set her lunchbox on the counter. Empty. Not a crumb left. It was as if she had licked the box clean. No crust, no apple peel scraps, no half-finished crackers. Nothing. At first, Andrew reasoned it away. Maybe the teachers were encouraging the kids to share lunches. Maybe Lily had decided she liked eating more. Maybe it was a growth spurt. After all, toddlers were unpredictable. He told himself not to overthink it. But something about it didn't sit right. And it wasn't just the lunchbox. It was Lily herself. She wasn't as chatty in the afternoons anymore. Usually, she'd come home full of stories about circle time, songs she sang, or who she played with during recess. But now, she was quieter, more withdrawn, tired. She'd barely make it through dinner before asking to be tucked in for the night. Andrew chalked it up to adjusting to preschool. It was a big change for her, and changes made kids tired. But deep down, something gnawed at him. One evening, after helping her change into her pajamas, Andrew decided to ask, "Did you like your lunch today, sweetheart?" Lily was sitting on her bed, fiddling with the hem of her pajama top. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed glued to the cartoon animals on her socks. "Lily," Andrew tried again, keeping his voice gentle. She shrugged, barely looking up. "I didn't eat it." Andrew frowned. "You weren't hungry?" She shook her head, curls bouncing softly. Then, in a small, almost inaudible voice, she said, "Mr. Reynolds eats it." At first, the words didn't register. He blinked. "What?" She still wouldn't meet his eyes. "He takes it." Andrew felt his stomach twist in a way he didn't quite understand. Surely she was mistaken. Mr. Reynolds was her teacher. Teachers didn't take food from children. Maybe Lily had misunderstood something. Maybe it was a joke. Kids got things mixed up all the time. But Andrew's gut told him this wasn't just some silly preschool mix-up. "Every day?" he asked, careful to keep his tone light. Lily nodded. Andrew's jaw tightened. This wasn't right. He needed to find out what was really going on. But before he could confront anyone, he had to be sure. He needed proof. That night, Andrew barely slept. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, Lily's words replaying over and over in his head. "Mr. Reynolds eats it." It didn't make sense. Why would a grown man, someone trusted to care for and protect children, take a little girl's lunch? Andrew wanted to believe there was another explanation. Maybe Lily had offered it to him. Maybe it was part of a lesson or an activity. But he couldn't shake the feeling that it was something darker. The next morning, Andrew studied Lily as she ate her breakfast. Her legs swung under the table as she hummed softly between bites of toast. She seemed like her usual self. Sweet. Innocent. But something was different. He sat down across from her. "Hey, Lilybug," he said gently. "Can you tell Daddy more about Mr. Reynolds in your lunch?" She chewed slowly, thinking. "He says I don't need it all," she said simply. "Because I'm little." Andrew's fingers tightened around his coffee mug. "Did you tell him you're hungry?" Lily nodded. "I did. But he said big people need it more." There was a coldness in Andrew's chest that hadn't been there before. He forced his voice to stay steady. "Has he ever done anything else? Said anything mean? Touched you?" Lily shook her head firmly. "No. He just takes my food." Andrew let out a slow breath. It was something at least. She wasn't being hurt physically. But this was still wrong. Completely wrong. He wanted to storm into that classroom, demand answers, and protect his daughter right then and there. But he knew if he did that without proof, It could be brushed off as a misunderstanding. It would be his word against a respected teacher's. He needed undeniable evidence. Tomorrow, he told Lily softly, I'm going to pack your lunch like always. But Daddy's going to put something special inside. It's a secret, okay? Don't tell anyone. Lily's eyes brightened. She nodded eagerly. Okay, Daddy. Andrew smiled, but inside, he was bracing himself for whatever he was about to uncover. The next morning, Andrew woke up with a plan. He packed Lily's lunch with the usual items: PB Vaj, apple slices, crackers, a juice box, but this time he added a small, hidden voice recorder. It was something he had bought years ago for work meetings, small enough to slip inside the lining of her lunchbox. He tested it thoroughly before tucking it into place. Lily was too busy playing with her doll to notice. Before they left for school, Andrew crouched in front of her. Remember, baby, it's our secret. Lily giggled. Secret. As Andrew drove her to school, his hands were tight on the steering wheel. His mind raced. What if nothing happened? What if he was wrong? But what if he was right? He watched Lily hop out of the car and run toward the preschool entrance. He wanted to stay. He wanted to march inside and confront Mr. Reynolds. But he didn't. Not yet. Instead, he went home and waited. The hours crawled by. Andrew tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting back to the recorder in Lily's lunchbox. What was it picking up? Would it be enough? By the time the school day ended, he was already parked outside the preschool, waiting. Lily came running out, curls bouncing, backpack jostling on her tiny shoulders. Hey, sweet girl, Andrew greeted, keeping his tone calm. Hi, Daddy, she chirped as she climbed into the car. You hungry? He asked. She shook her head. No, Mr. Reynolds took it again. Andrew's throat went dry. His jaw clenched, but he smiled for Lily's sake. It's okay, baby. We'll have a snack when we get home. The second they walked through the door, Andrew set down his keys and opened Lily's lunchbox. He pulled out the recorder, his hands steady, though his heart pounded against his ribs. He plugged in his earbuds and hit play. At first, it was nothing but classroom sounds. Kids talking, chairs scraping, the faint murmur of Mr. Reynolds giving instructions. Then came a zipper sound, and then Mr. Reynolds' voice. All right, let's see what we've got today. Andrew's stomach twisted. Peanut butter and jelly again, the teacher said, almost casually. You always have the best lunches, Lily. Lily's voice followed, soft but clear. That's mine. You don't eat all this, sweetheart, Reynolds replied smoothly. Little girls don't eat much, right? I'll take this today. Another pause. A juice box rustling. I do love apple juice, Reynolds added. There was silence for a moment. Then Lily's tiny voice, small and uncertain. But I'm hungry. A deep sigh from Reynolds. Lily, I told you. Big people need it more. You'll be fine. The recording ended. Andrew's blood ran cold. This wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Mr. Reynolds was stealing food from his daughter, belittling her, ignoring her hunger, and acting like it was normal. He was done waiting. The next morning, Andrew woke early. He kissed Lily goodbye and left the house with the recorder in his pocket, feeling heavier than ever. At the preschool office, he wasted no time. I need to speak with Principal Harris, he told the receptionist. The woman blinked at the seriousness in his voice, but quickly nodded and led him inside. Principal Harris, a woman in her mid-50s with sharp gray eyes, greeted him. Mr. Walker, what brings you in today? Andrew met her gaze, calm but direct. It's about my daughter. And Mr. Reynolds. She frowned, concern flickering in her expression. Comein. He placed the recorder on her desk and pressed play. As the audio played, her face shifted from polite attention to disbelief, then hardened into something cold. When it ended, silence hung thick in the air. Mr. Walker, she finally said, this is deeply troubling. We'll handle it immediately. Good, Andrew replied. Because if you don't, I will. Reynolds was called to the office within minutes. He strolled in casually, smiling, until he saw Andrew. Principal head is vasted Lucimi. Sit down, Mr. Reynolds. For a moment, Reynolds hesitated. Then he sat. Andrew noticed the subtle twitch in his hands. He knew. Principal Harris leaned forward. Is there anything you'd like to say before I play this recording? Reynolds' smile was tight. I'm not sure what this is about. Andrew crossed his arms. You know exactly what this is about. She pressed play, and they watched Reynolds' face pale as his own voice filled the room. When it ended, Principal Harris exhaled sharply. This is damning, Mr. Reynolds. Reynolds opened his mouth, scrambling for words. It's not what it sounds like. Andrew laughed bitterly. Oh, because it sounds like you're stealing from my daughter. Reynolds' defenses crumbled under their gaze. I was just trying to keep the food from being wasted, he stammered. Andrew stood. You stole from a hungry child. Every day. Principal Harris didn't hesitate. You're on administrative leave, effective immediately. There will be an investigation. Reynolds didn't protest. He grabbed his things and left. Over the next few weeks, other parents came forward. More kids had mentioned their lunches going missing, but their concerns had been brushed aside until now. Reynolds was fired, permanently banned from working with children. One afternoon, Andrew picked Lily up from school. She climbed into the car with a grin, holding her lunchbox. Look, Daddy, I didn't eat all my food today. He raised an eyebrow. Weren't you hungry? She giggled. I was, but I saved some for you. She opened the lunchbox to reveal half a sandwich and a few crackers. Andrew swallowed the lump in his throat and took a bite. It was the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich he'd ever had. And in that moment, he promised himself he would always protect her. No child should ever have to wonder if they are truly safe. The people we trust with our children have a heavy responsibility. But trust should never be blind. If something feels wrong, ask questions. Pay attention. Listen. Believe them. Because sometimes the smallest voices tell the biggest truths.